Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a truly captivating story from our source text called Madam Rides the Bus. It's this beautifully written narrative about a young girl taking her very first trip outside her village. But, as you're going to see, this is way more than just a quick trip to town. It's really a massive, eye-opening induction into life, independence, and even mortality. We're going to break down her adventure step by step and figure out exactly how a simple, short bus ride can completely flip a young person's worldview upside down.
But first, I want you to think about something. Have you ever planned a secret excursion entirely on your own, completely under the radar, without any grown-ups knowing? Our source text actually kicks off with this exact prompt, and honestly, it's the perfect way to tap into our protagonist's mindset. Try to remember that specific feeling, wanting to do something incredibly grown-up, mapping it all out in total secrecy, and that crazy thrill of hoping you don't get caught. Hold on to that feeling, because that's exactly the energy driving the story we're exploring today.
So, meet our protagonist. She's an intensely curious 8-year-old named Valli, though we'll just call her Valli. Now, the text mentions that Valli didn't have any playmates her own age on her street, so her absolute favorite thing to do? Intensely curious observation. She'd literally just stand in her front doorway and watch whatever was happening outside. And for her, this wasn't boring in the slightest. The text makes a point to say that watching the street gave her just as much joy as any of the elaborate games other kids played. It gave her all sorts of unusual experiences, but mostly it gave her a front row seat to her absolute biggest fascination, the town-bound bus.
Day in and day out, Valli would watch that bus roll by, just staring wistfully at the passengers getting on and off. And looking at their faces would just spark all these longings, dreams, and hopes in her. This wasn't just a fleeting thought either. It morphed into this overwhelming, all-consuming desire to actually ride the bus herself. It got to the point where if one of her friends rode it and tried to brag about the town, Valli would get so intensely jealous she'd literally shout, "Prow! Prow!" to shut them down. She wanted that experience, and she wanted it all for herself. So, she came up with a master plan. And to pull this off, she had to do some serious recon. She'd discreetly listen in on her neighbors to get the facts. She was calculating and recalculating. First up, the fare, 30 paise one way. Now, to an 8-year-old who hardly ever saw that kind of cash, 60 paise for a round trip was an absolute fortune. She was super thrifty, saving every stray coin she could find, completely fighting off the urge to buy toys or balloons. She even skipped riding the merry-go-round at the village fair. Next, she timed the trip, exactly 45 minutes. And finally, her window of opportunity. Her mother consistently took a nap from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. That was her chance. Honestly, what an incredibly painstaking, elaborate plan for an 8-year-old.
And then, it's go time. One absolutely beautiful spring afternoon, right as the bus is about to turn onto the main highway, a tiny voice suddenly yells out, "Stop the bus! Stop the bus!" A little hand shoots up in the air, totally commanding. The bus slows down to a crawl, and the conductor tells whoever is out there to hurry up. Valli just proudly announces, "It's me. I'm the one who has to get on." She even flashes her coins from outside the bus, basically proving she's a serious paying customer ready to execute her master plan.
Now, the conductor happens to be a really jolly guy who loves a good joke, so he stretches out a hand to help her up. But Valli, no way. She tells him point blank she can get on all by herself. When he playfully calls her, "My fine madam," and tells everyone to make way, she gets a little shy at first and practically runs to an empty seat. But that feisty personality of hers bubbles right back up. A bit later, when the conductor and another passenger are joking about her acting like a grown-up, she shoots them this angry glare and firmly says, "I am not a madam, please remember that, and you've not yet given me my ticket." She is fiercely, absolutely fiercely asserting her independence.
And this right here perfectly captures the dynamic between Valli and the conductor. He doesn't dismiss her or treat her like a baby, he actually plays right along with her super serious vibe. He replies, "I'll remember," mimicking her exact tone of voice. The text notes that everyone on the bus cracked up, and eventually, even the ultra-focused Valli couldn't help but join in and laugh too. It's this incredibly warm, funny exchange that shows us how hard she's trying to be an adult while still having those spontaneous, joyful reactions of a kid.
Her interactions with the other passengers are just as telling. At one point, an older man gets genuinely worried she might fall and tells her to sit down. Well, Valli responds haughtily. She's totally annoyed by the babying and proudly snaps back, "There's nobody here who's a child. I've paid my 30 paise like everyone else." Later on, an elderly woman sits next to her, and Valli finds her absolutely repulsive. The woman has these big holes in her earlobes, she's wearing ugly earrings, and she's chewing betel nut. When she asks if Valli is traveling completely alone, Valli just answers her curtly and tells her to mind her own business. She is determined to be a tough, self-sufficient traveler. As the bus keeps rolling, Valli is practically devouring the scenery out the window. She takes in this narrow road running right along a canal, palm trees, mountains in the distance, and the brightest blue sky. Then acres and acres of vivid green fields stretching as far as she could see. But the absolute highlight of the trip out of nowhere, this young cow, tail straight up in the air, starts running wildly right in the middle of the road, directly in front of the bus. The driver keeps honking, but the cow just gets more spooked and gallops even faster. According to the text, Valli found this to be the funniest thing ever. She was clapping her hands with glee and laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. It's just a beautiful moment of pure, innocent joy. So, after roaring past a train station, the bus finally rolls into this busy, totally put-together shopping street. Destination reached. Valli sees these huge, bright shops, glittering window displays full of clothes and merchandise, and massive crowds of people. The text literally describes her as being struck dumb with wonder. She's just gaping at it all. This is the big payoff for months of saving and scheming. The vast, bustling world she'd only ever dreamed about is finally right there in front of her.
But here's a really fascinating question to think about. Why didn't Valli get off the bus, or at least accept the conductor's offer for a cold drink? I mean, everyone else gets off, but Valli just sits there and hands the conductor another 30 passes for the ride back. The conductor is actually surprised, asking if she wants to look around, and even offers to buy her a drink himself, but Valli completely shuts it down. She admits she'd be way too scared to wander around by herself, and she refuses the free drink because she simply doesn't have the budget for it and absolutely refuses to take charity. It shows this staggering amount of maturity. She is sticking strictly to her plan and her budget. She came for the ride, and that's it.
So the return journey kicks off with all those same wonderful sights, but then the story hits its emotional climax. Remember that lively young cow that had Valli laughing until she cried? Well, on the way back, she sees something devastating. That very same young cow is lying dead by the side of the road, obviously struck by a fast-moving vehicle. She looks at the conductor and asks, "Isn't that the same cow?" He just nods. The text describes how this lovable, beautiful creature had suddenly lost all its charm and its life. It was just lying there, legs spread-eagled with a fixed stare in its lifeless eyes and blood all over. The visual contrast from just an hour ago is incredibly stark and deeply, deeply jarring. And this single moment completely shifts her entire perspective. The memory of the dead cow absolutely haunted Valli. It totally wiped out her enthusiasm for the trip. You see, this wasn't just a sad thing to look at, it was a harsh, abrupt induction into the reality of death. The same girl who was just standing on her seat, hungrily taking in the landscape, suddenly didn't want to look out the window anymore. She sat there silently, practically glued to her seat for the rest of the ride. Her joyful little adventure had taken a very heavy, very serious turn. The bus finally pulls back into her village at exactly 3:40 p.m. Valli stretches out, says a polite goodbye to the smiling conductor, and runs straight home. And when she walks in the door, she finds her mother awake and casually chatting with one of Valli's aunts. It's the aunt from South Street, who the text describes as a total chatterbox. They are just going on and on with their conversation, completely and utterly oblivious to the fact that Valli just had this monumental, life-changing excursion outside the village. Her top-secret master plan actually worked flawlessly. As she's walking in, Valli catches her mother saying something about how there are so many things happening out in the world that we can't possibly know about. And even if we do, we rarely understand them completely. Valli just breathes out, "Oh yes." Her mother stops and asks what she meant by that, and Valli drops this incredibly sly comment, "I was just agreeing with what you said about things happening without our knowledge." Her aunt instantly rolls her eyes and dismisses her as a chit of a girl who loves poking her nose into grown-up conversations. But Valli, she just smiles to herself. She knows something they don't. She's holding on to the secret wisdom of her journey.
When we take a step back and really look at Valli's adventure, it becomes pretty clear that this story is about way more than just a bus ride. First, we're seeing this really sudden loss of childhood innocence. The flip from laughing at that running cow to being completely haunted by its death is super profound. Second, it's a beautiful story about the quiet assertion of personal independence. You've got an 8-year-old taking total charge, managing her own finances, and navigating the world entirely on her own terms. And finally, it perfectly highlights the massive gap between just knowing about death and truly understanding it. This little 45-minute trip wasn't just a ride down the highway. It was a profound induction into the mystery of life itself.
So, I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. Have you ever made a journey that was unforgettable in some way? And what exactly made it so memorable? Because, just like Valli, sometimes the shortest trips, especially the ones we dream up in our own heads, end up teaching us the absolute most about the world and about ourselves. Take a second to think about your own coming-of-age moments. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today. I really hope this helped illuminate the incredible depth hidden inside Madam Rides the Bus. Keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.